Welcome back to Why Blank Lost for the second person out of Survivor 43. I'm David Bloomberg, and I am, of course, oh my gosh, I cannot speak today. Let's keep going here. I am, of course, joined once again by my co-host, Jessica Lewis, who has left me speechless, but I may leave her voteless, depending on whether she has all of the necessary beads.
Okay, wait, now time out. I might just be able to help in that regard because I might just have a whole lot of beads right here. So I think I win and I get to keep my vote.
One might ask how you got those beads.
Oh, one might ask how I got a whole lot of beads. Look, I have more beads. I have so many beads. I had so many people giving me beads. Look at this. I have silver beeds. Like, I could
Were they
not
giving you
stop.
beads in New Orleans?
What was that?
Were they giving you beads in New Orleans?
I think I win. I get to keep my vote. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. Yes, you have all the beads.
I have all the beads.
And therefore you get your vote.
Mm-hmm. I would have one hell of a hat. Could you imagine? Oh my goodness.
You could make a hat out of just beads.
I know, I really could. It'd be a hard hat to wear.
It would be, but it would be a hard hat because it would be all beads. I thought that's what you were going to say. All right. At this point, people are like, what podcast have I tuned into? But between me not being able to speak at the start and now just all this bead talk. But
beads were a big deal at the Survivor.
I know. Yes, Mike Bloom named it the bead wear advantage.
Ooh, that's good. I like that, Mike Bloom. Mm-hmm. He's creative.
Yes, he is. But what we really want to talk about is something.
The 400-pound snake?
No, I was not even going to mention that. But
damn it.
I was going to mention something you normally don't like to talk about, which is our predictions for last week, because you got the first one right, and you even convinced Tiffany to change her prediction and go along with you.
Can I just say, nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. So Thank you very much. Thank you, Tiffany, for listening to me. Because, I did actually get one right. And I will say, Owen has had a pretty big week, too. The episode was named after something that he said, actually his nickname, right?
Lovable curmudgeon.
Yeah. So he's got a whole episode, named after him, and secret scene all about Owen. So I'm just feeling pretty good about Owen right now.
I hope so. I hope they're not just trying to cram all his content in. But you know what this means. You can no longer say that you suck at predictions.
Oh no, I can say I suck at predictions.
No, you just gave yourself a high five, and it doesn't matter. It's it's the first time.
Well, I guess we'll try. I'll try to suck again. Okay.
No. Okay.
Anywho, moving on.
Yeah, that's going in the out of context Twitter account.
That and the 400-pound snake.
Yeah. All right. Well, even though, Jessica, you predicted ahead of time who would go, we still need to explain why she went.
Yes.
And to do that, we will follow our usual path of comparing her game to the rules for winning that I originally wrote way back after season 1 and have been updating ever since. We'll look at all the non-spoiler information available to us from what we saw on TV, interviews, social media, secret scenes, you name it, we'll use it.
Yeah. And I will say, a lot of repetitive stuff this week, but that's okay. It kind of makes sense, right?
Repetitive in what way?
And just the interviews, there wasn't a whole lot of
kind of show, but just moments. Interviews.
Yes, I mean, and I get it because that's her story and that's what transpired. Mm-hmm. But I will say that if we could just kind of put it all in one word, it would be Jessie.
Yes. But and Jessie will definitely come up on the podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing is everyone wants to ask their questions, and she, of course, has her set answers to those.
Right.
We got some good tidbits though, and there were a
Sure.
few times where she mentioned different things. So I'm sure those will come up. But before we get to the rules, we always have things to talk about. And first, of course, is a topic that we frequently discuss here. Why people tell everyone else about their advantages and disadvantages and everything.
Right.
Because even Jeff brought it up at Tribal Council, and he said he hears that people scratch their heads about why people share all the information and advantages. So he hears that. Where does he hear that? We discussed last week. We joked about him listening to this podcast. So
I think
maybe he does. Maybe he does.
Hi, Jeff. Jeff, don't forget, I have this.
Yes. Never forget that.
Yeah. So, yes, I thought that was quite interesting to hear him speak of that. And I do think that some of the responses relative to it were interesting because I see a lot of players attempting to weave in the new era of Survivor into all of these components and try to justify certain things. And I guess I understand it, but at the same time, it's
they can't weave in like a theme. They can't say, well, as a millennial, I feel that if I'm going to have milk delivered by drone, I should also have my beware advantage delivered by drone.
Right. Yeah.
So they have to say the new era because that's the only thing they have to work with.
I know. So everything kind of gets melded into that. That's part of the new era of Survivor is you tell everybody everything.
Or it's that you tell everybody it's part of the new era of Survivor. That's where I thought you were going. As someone in the new era of Survivor, I must bring up the new era of Survivor.
Yeah, and that's a fair point as well. There's a whole lot of that happening.
But yeah, I mean, they all had reasons. And, Jeff said, in answer kind of to his own question, that it's about currency and trust. And Jesse added that when you're authentic with people, they're authentic back. In real life, that's probably true. Not on Survivor.
No.
On Survivor, when you're authentic with people about things like advantages, they use it against you.
Yeah. Well, and even if you go back to some of the most incredible moments of Survivor history, one being Parvati's idol play where she played two idols. What did she do? She kept a secret, right? She did share a little bit of that information, but she didn't tell everyone. Not everyone knew what was happening. Her closest ally had no idea that that's what was happening.
Yep.
And that's why she pulled it off so beautifully, because she understood how to manage the information. And I feel like that is a lost art. And it's a very difficult thing to do. It's a hard thing to not want to share when you know something and when you have information, but you have to know how to manage it better.
Right.
And I do feel like the oversharing, the need to share has become a resonating theme that we are seeing much more than we have in old school Survivor.
Yes. I mean, part of it is driven by, okay, they know they're going on this boat. Something is going to happen. So they have to decide whether they're going to tell the truth or not, or, whatever. Okay, I understand that. And I do have to say, Cody telling Jesse and NECA about his beware advantage helped secure it.
Yes.
Because they were able to put together their little play to get all the beads.
Right. But that's managing information. If you need to share and there are moments that you need to share, that's one of those moments. And so that's the part that people really need to think about when they're in those situations is who needs to know. And it really should just be on a need to know basis.
Yes. And they definitely needed to know because they were all solidly aligned. They needed to know what happened. They needed to figure out the voting situation too.
Right. Yeah.
But for every plus, there's a minus.
I was just going to say there's always a but.
Yeah. Yes. And it has living across it. As smart as the plan for the beads was, it was 10 times as dumb for Cody to take a beware advantage in a situation where he desperately needed his vote.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you thinking? you know that the beware advantage is going to take your vote away.
Yeah.
You know it's not
Maybe
going
he
to
thought it was new era Survivor and it would change it.
It said beware on it.
I know. I'm not trying to me, I think it's interesting the mechanism by which they placed it onto the tree stump.
Well hidden on that tree stump.
Yeah. There. So I feel like it's like they're enticing children with candy. They're like,
well, he said
we're not going to make you look for it, and we're just going to put it here.
Yeah.
And then force people, because here's the other side of that, right? If people know that the advantages are beware advantages, they might become less inclined to go out looking for them, right? If there's this idea that, well, I don't want that, so I'm not going to go out looking, because one, then people are going to be suspicious of me. And two, if it's a beware advantage, I'm going to lose my vote potentially. So now it's like Survivor has to be like, well, then we're just going to put it right here where everybody can see it, and just entice people to be like, ooh, I want to look. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I feel like, and I think we saw this last season too, or in 41, or both. I feel like it starts off more well hidden and then gets progressively less hidden as the days go on.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Because like Ellie was looking and she looked right past it. You know, it was not out in front of her. It was in the crook of a tree. It wasn't that well hidden, but
right.
You know, and that was on their camp, and that was like a day or two earlier. And so I think as time goes on, it magically gets less and less hidden. Yeah. And they're not necessarily trying to get any one player to find it. It's just they want someone to find it. And so, you know, but still, he even said how dumb it was that he had screwed up the vote. Jesse was super annoyed about it. You know, I mean, Cody, I know your whole life is about living in the moment. And we got the backstory on that. And it is a very touching backstory. And it made you change your life. But maybe in the game of Survivor, you don't just jump in and then realize it was a huge mistake. But then again,
who better
to
have had this happen to than Cody? Because he actually was able to pull off the bead thing better than anybody could have ever pulled it off. He already had the hat made. We saw the hat in the previous episode. So it's not like this wasn't something that he had around. He was wearing it in one of his confessionals. So this is something that is part of Cody. And then to come up with this plan, and I can't remember who suggested it first, but genius idea. Absolutely genius idea.
I think it was Jesse.
Genius. I mean, because not that type of approach, I could have never pulled it off if I'd been like, hey, can I have your beads so I can decorate? They'd be like, go away. You know what I mean? Like, but Cody, he's just this fun-loving, living kind of guy, right? Yeah. Who is just desirous of having a good time, and he's got this hat and he wants to decorate. All right, well, that sounds like Cody.
Yeah, it was like Xander or Marianne finding, you know, the beware advantage for making phrases.
Right.
When they first started, people are like, that's Xander, that's Marianne, whatever.
Right.
You know.
Bunnies and mailboxes.
Yeah. Now, with that said, Cody did make another mistake. And that was at Tribal Council. Because when Justine was asked by Jeff about getting a hat, or rather, sorry, Justine mentioned it. Jeff asked about Justine getting the hat. Cody should have said, well, if I'm still around, I'll make her one. But instead, he said, well, if she's still around, I'll make her one. And it's like, if that were me, I'd be like, what'd you just say? I mean, it didn't end up being a problem. But if Justine had picked up on that, she could have used her shot in the dark.
Yeah, and that is something that I do think is an interesting side note in all of this. And she had talked about it in her exit interviews that she never felt like she was going to be in a situation where she needed to use a shot in the dark. And so they had handled that part very well. Made her feel comfortable, made her feel safe. And then to go to tribal council and potentially put that, flip that on its head is certainly problematic. And the fact that she didn't pick up on it was a huge bonus. Not that she necessarily would have been safe, but then she also wouldn't have had her vote, but I guess it wouldn't have mattered anyway.
It mattered, yeah. Continuing with people on this tribe making mistakes, I was really worried that Dwight was putting himself into position to get voted out because he didn't want to go along with Jesse. He had no vote, so he should have been the one saying whatever you want.
Yes.
Not pushing back pretty hard. Now, I understand what Dwight was saying about wanting to set himself up for the future, even without a vote, and that is smart. That's part of the rules. But he needed to read the room a little bit better.
Yeah. Now, do we know how he gets his vote back?
It's back. It was a one-time.
Oh, that's
vote at the next tribal council. Yeah.
Okay. I can't remember all these rules.
I know.
You should make an advantage poster rule thing.
Yeah, you can't tell the players you can't tell the advantages without a scorecard.
It's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, I do think also, speaking of Dwight, that it was pretty funny how he saw himself compared to how the others saw him. Because we saw Jesse saying, well, Dwight's not really connected with anybody. And Dwight being like, I have social connections with everybody. I even did a TikTok on it. I thought it was funny enough.
You and your TikToks.
Yes.
And I think that Dwight is definitely in he's in an interesting spot. I think that he could have utilized the no vote to his advantage in a weird way, because if he had approached it as if I'll do whatever you want because I have no power, that might have been more beneficial to him, because what else are you supposed to do? You don't have a vote. That is your power. So at that point, you're just like, whatever you guys want to do, I fully support, go along with it. I've got no stake in this. It's not mine. And that's really the only way that you can earn some type of kinship, I guess.
Yeah. Well, yes and no, because remember Omer last season, he started his power when he had no vote.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. So that's how you do it.
Well, by trying to push the right situations.
Yes, but he did it in a way that he didn't seem slighted. It's all about the presentation. And he was he would lead with, listen, I know I don't have a vote, so I know that I'm not part of this, this debate and this decision because I won't be voting. But then he would still sprinkle in bits of information.
Right. But you should know what's going on over there and over there. And, and so, if Dwight had tried that, but instead, Dwight was not going to pull one over on Jesse. It was a balance of power, a balance of perception situation. And Dwight was not the one on the high end.
Right.
So we'll see now that he gets his vote, how that plays out. I have some thoughts and predictions.
I'm sure you do. And now you're up against me, who's great at prediction.
Yes. Now, the only other thing I wanted to mention was something I saw online. There were a number of people tweeting at the beginning of the episode about Gabler being so tired and sick early in the episode. And that man looked like he had been through a 15-round boxing match with Muhammad Ali, by the way. But they were saying things like, oh, look at Gabler, but they voted out Mariah because she was the weak one. And all I could think of was, you didn't listen to our podcast last week.
You should have told him that.
Well, I didn't want to get into a Twitter war, so I just
those are not fun.
No. But with all that said, do you have anything else you want to discuss before we move on to the rules?
Yes, I do want to spend just a moment on NECA and the challenge performance. Not that I want to give her a hard time, but it really looked like she was trying to cause them to lose.
Someone said that to me on Twitter. Someone was like, is she throwing this?
I mean, the way that she grabbed the bag and just threw it on, don't need that. I mean, everything about it, even the way that she was kind of walking up slowly and it was Noelle was yelling at her that she had to help. Yes. And I was watching this going, my gosh, maybe she really wanted them to go to tribal council.
I think she was just dead tired. I think that she is the least physically strong person there, and they had, they haven't been eating for, well, it's only
right.
been
And
like
that
4 days or
challenge,
whatever.
my
But yeah,
gosh, that was brutal. That
as
was
you
brutal.
mentioned, 400-pound snake.
400-pound snake
Yeah.
with only 5 people having to pick up the 400-pound snake.
Yes.
But I rewatched the tribal counts, or the challenge again, and I was a little taken aback. I'm like, wow, that looks like, if someone was trying to, that's what it looks like. But
I think they could do a better job of faking it, if they were honestly trying to throw it.
yeah, the bag with the puzzle piece
I
in
think
it.
she just had no idea. I did rewatch also a couple of times, and at the beginning, and I know that Jeff's explanation is really more for us than it is for them, because they get a different explanation. But at the beginning, he didn't say anything about taking the bag with the puzzle piece.
Well, and he did have to remind the yellow team that or Baca, excuse me, that they had to take that. I don't know, but I'm certain that it was probably covered in the much more extensive,
right,
here's how you do the challenge version.
Yes.
From Jeff Probst.
Yes. Yes. All right. Well, before we get to just how Justine did, let's mention that the rules we're about to cover are in a much more colorful, also available in a much more, I just cannot talk today, colorful. Wow. And, oh my gosh, and shorter form. Wow. I don't know what my problem is right now.
I don't know. You know what it is? Because I was right in my predictions. Now you're scared.
It is. It has shocked me so much.
It really has.
Thrown
so
my universe just out of proportion here. But yes. So anyway, it is at robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed. You can get the poster. You can scroll down, get the poster t-shirt, which, by the way, comes in a sweatshirt, as I am wearing, because it's getting chilly.
It is.
You can get the checklist, t-shirt, sweatshirt, mug, you name it. So again, go to robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed.
Yes, order it, wear it, love it, buy
it. Probably not in that order. You probably should buy it before you wear it.
Order it. I don't remember what I said, but okay. It's been a day.
Yes, yes. Well, before the vote, Noelle said not one person has done anything wrong on the tribe, and nobody deserved to be going home. Well, we know that's not the case, because she thought someone else did, in fact, deserve to leave. She just wasn't expecting it to be her friend. This raises the question of whether Justine deserved to go, and what it even means to say someone, quote, deserves it. If you don't follow my rules, do you deserve to go? If someone is better in one area or another than you are, do you deserve to go? Or is it not even about deserving to go, and more about who can do a better job staying? These are all interesting, hypothetical, metaphysical questions. But let's get to the concrete and look at what Justine did and didn't do in the game. It's time to figure out why Justine lost. We'll begin with the first and most important rule, which is to scheme and plot. I do think Justine did a pretty good job here overall. We, of course, saw that she was tight with Noelle, which we'll also discuss in the second rule. But they also had Dwight and clearly thought they had Jesse on their side, too. Now, I gathered that from the episode, especially after having watched it a second time. But Justine said in interviews that he was really deep with them in terms of strategizing, and saying he was pretending to be with Cody and NECA, and even discussing what he should tell Cody and NECA, etc. So he was like acting like he was a double agent. But it turns out he was a triple agent. Now, so while she felt about 90% solid with him, he wasn't with her at all.
Yeah.
Which is also a problem, because she felt so solid with him that they did a vote split with him in case NECA played her shot in the dark. And it also explains why she said in her final words that she got hoodwinked by Jesse.
Yeah, and I will say that's why at the beginning I said most of her interviews could just be called Jesse, because it was it was so interesting to just see the effect that one person can truly have on another person's game, because she did put so much trust into him. And so that's just going to show how great he's playing the game, because he was able to build that trust, but now he's kind of outed himself, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, but it doesn't matter. He's on the majority. I mean,
well, right. Except now Dwight is upset with him, but they still have the majority with Cody and NECA.
Right.
And they don't usually do a swap in this new era of Survivor. So
right.
I guess that won't be an issue either.
I mean, probably not. Although in the new era, you have to be prepared for anything.
That's true. That is true. But yeah, so I do think that Justine was certainly scheming and plotting. She seemed to have a good idea about what she wanted to do in the game. And her and Noelle were very close. But it was also interesting that the duo component, which I know maybe I'm, jumping ahead a little bit here, but I know. But it was so obvious to everyone.
Yes.
Justine openly talked about it. And so I don't know if that was problematic or if it was okay, because it seemed like, oh, we're going to get there then. Well, if you have...
for those of you only listening, I am nodding my head vigorously.
Vigorously. Because I obviously that can then become a problem. But if you have 3 sets of 2,
yes,
the numbers aren't really going to work out so well.
And now I'm like dizzy from nodding my head so vigorously.
You can stop. Everyone saw it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, with what you were talking about with the swap, it's interesting because that plays into one of my criticisms about Justine, is that she admitted she hadn't talked game or strategy with Cody or NECA.
Right.
And that also plays into the 2-2-2 thing. She said in interviews it was because those two were so obvious and not wanting to work with her and wanting to target her. And that is understandable. Players, we've seen it before, but they really should try to work with everyone. I know Cody was targeting her right off the bat, and we'll get to that later on. I also know that they weren't talking to her, but then, try to reach across the aisle.
Yeah.
But she said they clearly made their minds up about her, but that should have meant her trying hard to change those minds, not just accepting it.
Right.
I suspect she felt that she had a majority of 4, so she didn't need to worry about them. But it's still something you should at least attempt to do, because you're never 100%. And going back to what you were talking about with the swap, what if there had been one and she had been stuck on a new tribe with Cody and NECA?
Right. Yeah. I mean, and again, you don't know what's going to happen in the game. And also with such small size tribes, every relationship becomes that much more significant, because you don't have 10 people, 9 people sitting there. You have 6. And so your options are very limited. So you really need to create the bonds like we saw Jesse clearly do, because the bonds that he created allowed him to literally control the vote.
Yeah.
And what was going to happen. And Justine was along for the ride because she had put all of her faith into Jesse. And Jesse was the one that was calling the shots and was not taking her along with him. And so it is a very interesting issue that when you just don't necessarily bond with someone, you still gotta try. You just have to. Even if you don't want to, you have to for the sake of the game.
Yeah, right at the beginning of the game especially. So this is different from, for example, what happened to you, where people on your tribe got pissed at you because they felt you had wronged them in the vote. And we've talked about that before, and but this wasn't that situation. This was right off the bat.
Right. She said they never even
but she
chatted,
also,
talked.
Yeah, she never reached out to them either. So you got to try. Even if you're rebuffed, you got to try. And rebuffed doesn't mean taking your buff off and putting a new one on either.
Nice.
So.
Hashtag rebuffed.
Yes. We can move to the second rule, which we kind of inched into a little bit already.
I did a little bit. Inched in there.
It says not to scheme and plot too much and to keep your scheming secret. Now, there's that obvious duo of Justine and Noelle. anytime you're in a situation like that, it draws unwanted attention. Justine said in her interviews that sometimes it can work to be in a duo. No, not like this, Justine. I'm sorry. Not when you pair up right off the bat in a tribe of only 6. You're so tight, like you mentioned. It's so obvious.
Mm-hmm.
They needed to do a better job of hiding just how close they had become in such a short time.
And that's the thing. It was obvious right off the bat. Cody was calling him out on it right away.
Oh, yeah.
And Cody was making sure that everybody else knew about it and how we can't trust them because they're really close and they're tight. And it's one of those things that we've talked about this before.
Mm-hmm.
Those first votes, you're looking for any reason, right, to vote someone out. Yep. And Cody was playing right into that, giving everybody every reason to want to vote out Justine, using that relationship that she had with Noelle, using the fact that she was a salesperson and you can't trust anyone in sales. But he really did add to a narrative that then made other people start to think the same way.
Yes. Have you been reading my notes?
This is what happens when we do this for so long.
I know. All right. The third rule tells players to be flexible. And for this, I need to refer back again to our discussion in the first rule about not even really trying to reach out to Cody and NECA. We don't need to rehash that, but like we both said, you need to keep as many options open as possible.
Yeah.
Other than that, did you have any thoughts about her in this rule?
No. I mean, I really think that I do think that part of the reason why she didn't take that extra step to be flexible the way that she was is because, she felt comfortable. Right. But that doesn't mean that you can't still try.
Right. Exactly. All right. The fourth rule tells players not to let their emotions control them. How do you think Justine did here?
Well, considering that she thought NECA was coming after her and knew that there was an issue with Cody potentially, I don't think that she let her emotions control her, but I think it blocked her in a way because it was like, oh, I know that NECA's coming for me and I know that Cody has an issue with me. And instead of attempting to figure out what was going on and instead of trying to like bridge that gap and say, hey, what can I do? What did I do? She just shut it down. And so I do feel like there was something there relative to the emotions, but it was just more of she just shut everything down instead of like dealing with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, also on the other side, she became friends so quickly with Noelle, apparently with Jesse, although, we saw on TV, Jesse being like, well, I'm close with everyone but her. And Justine's like, what are you talking about in her interviews? I do think, and this kind of just came to me now. I do wonder with Jesse playing triple agent, could he have been feeding information to Justine to make her not even want to try to get with them?
Oh, I'm sure. This is why he was so good at playing both sides the way that he did, because he made her feel so comfortable in her position. And so, I certainly would support that theory that it was Jesse that also stopped her from doing that and not just, and here's the thing too. He could have been playing with her emotions by saying, well, NECA said this or Cody said that, and this is what they want to do. And that's going to cause her even more distance to them if that's the reaction. And that's a normal reaction to have. If someone is calling you out or targeting you, suddenly now you want to target them and you don't want to form a bond with them. So that's definitely a fair assessment.
Yeah.
Look at you on the spot. Like
we do all this prep, ahead of time. And then it's like, oh, a little light bulb ding. All right. Well, the fifth rule we can move on to, which reminds players they need to pretend to be nice and play the social game. Clearly, the Survivor editors wanted us to think Justine had a problem here. I truly think it was overblown and they were just trying to simplify things. She didn't like spiders. Okay, who does? I had one come down from the ceiling right in front of me a day before this episode aired. I was on the phone with someone from RHAP. on the treadmill, and a spider comes down right in front of me. I'm like, I can't go anywhere. I'm attached to my phone on the treadmill. I'm like, what the, trying to kill it, I wasn't happy about it, but she said everyone else there was talking about them too. We just didn't see those comments.
Don't get me started on spiders. I have one hell of a spider story. Maybe I'll tell you another time.
Ooh, okay. I feel like
it helped get me into law school.
Okay. I thought it was a survivor spider story.
Oh no. If there had been spider, listen, I absolutely hate spiders. It's the one thing, for whatever reason, they freak me out. I don't know what it is. I just can't. So I support her hatred of spiders as well.
Yeah.
But I also have a backstory. I have another story, but it's not about spiders today. Okay. But anyway, someday I'll tell you all my spider stories.
Yeah, I have friends who have like accidentally used tear gas on spiders inside their car, so but
no, I grew up on a farm and we had spiders. I'm not even kidding you. Their backsides were like the size of grapes, like the big grapes. Mm-hmm. And when they would fall, you would hear them because they were so big. I don't know what kind of spiders they were. They were all over the place. It was horrifying. Horrifying. Thanks, Mom.
Yeah.
I know you listen. She can attest to these spiders. They were terrifying.
Well, see, if you had been Justine, they would have showed all those clips and none of anybody else.
Yes.
And we also saw her complain about her nails and trying to balance the shelter with Cody or something, and Cody just blowing her off. And I think all of these were supposed to indicate that she was a more troublesome presence, or that she wasn't an outside type of person, whatever. But I really don't think that had anything to do with why people wanted her gone.
I don't think so either. And I think too that I'm pretty sure she talked about this in her pre-game interviews, where she's like, I present a certain way and people might assume that I act a certain way, but I'm not that. Yes. Like I'm really athletic and I'll get in there. I'll do everything I've got to do. So I don't think that that's what she was doing. She might have because listen, your nails get gross out there. Yeah. I mean, it's disgusting. And you're like, I'm horrifying right now. Everybody talks about it. Everybody talks about how dirty they are. People don't know how dirty they are because you can't see yourself. People walk around with dirt on their face for weeks and have no idea.
Yeah.
So yes, it's definitely a thing.
Yeah. So, in that regard, I don't think she bears any real blame. As far as the rest of the social game, she felt she was closest to Noelle and Dwight, and Jesse was a close third. And that's fine, but she kind of admitted in her interviews it was an easy third since Cody and NECA weren't talking to her.
Right.
And so from Jesse's perspective, that put two people ahead of him in terms of who was closer, which is not necessarily very comforting.
Yeah.
He's like, she may have felt like he was close, but he was on the bottom half at that point.
Yeah. And that's a really fair point as well, because if you see how tight she is with Noelle, if she has to pick, she's picking Noelle.
Right. And if she has to pick after that, it's Dwight. So if they ended up going to tribal council 2 more times after this, bye-bye, Jesse.
Yeah. That's a good point.
So, well, thank you. All right. Well, the 6th rule warns against being too much of a threat. And obviously, Justine was the biggest threat on the whole island because she is a salesperson. I mean, a salesperson. There's nobody worse. Satan, forget about it. Salesperson. I mean, can you imagine how she wheels and deals and schemes to get people to buy? Hold on, let me check my notes. Cybersecurity software. Well, wait a minute. Wait.
I can't. You can't make me laugh like that.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
This is the first time I really do think, and she pointed this out too. I don't think salesperson has ever been a profession that people have went, maybe I shouldn't tell people that I'm in sales when I go out into the island.
I mean, like used car salesman.
Sure. But didn't we have a used car salesman win?
Brian Heidick, yes.
Yeah, so it can happen.
Yeah.
But I mean,
he played like a used car salesman.
And he did. But it's one of those things where, yeah, I mean, before I went out there, I had some very like real conversations with myself. Do I tell them I'm a lawyer so they know what I actually do, or do I come up with a different version of me? Because that has always been one of those.
I'm a salesperson.
Right. And it's, then you go to salesperson. Now you find out they can't pick that either.
Yeah.
So I do think that, but again, this goes back to Cody, who I'm impressed with, that he even came up with this line. And maybe he was really good at selling it because, I don't know, he's a salesperson.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people have talked about the salesman lying about his profession and saying all salespeople are liars and threats. But just as I can't see Justine scheming in her software sales, I can't really see it for elevator sales either.
Well, even for Cody. Because somebody needs to explain to me this.
Yeah. If you're trying to sell an elevator, it's already clear that they need one. It's not like you're going to go up to someone with a 1-story building and go, hey, what would look really good there? Another story. And then you could put on an elevator.
Right. How many elevator salesmen are knocking on the doors of these businesses, like fighting to get in there?
He has a little jacket. Want to buy an elevator?
Right. And if that really happens, Cody, please come to my office. We have an elevator that's in the back of my building that's been broken for like 3 years now, and nobody's fixing it. So you don't even need to give me a sales pitch.
You better watch it. He might try to upcharge you by like adding extra buttons. What a scheming salesperson would do.
He's so scheming selling those elevators. I'm just fascinated. Clearly, elevators have to come from somewhere, right? I mean, but in
Mommy and Daddy elevators, yes.
You're the worst. But I feel like it's one of those things where you just are like, hey, we need an elevator. And you go into some like Google site somewhere and there's a company that sells elevators. And that's what they do. Maybe that's what he does. I can't, but in my head, when you say elevator salesman, I imagine like, hello.
Hi, you can't even go door to door because they're not built yet.
No, you're gonna like drag an elevator with you. Like, let me show the newest model here.
Yeah. Here's our sample.
It comes in multiple colors. This one's glass. I'm fascinated.
Sorry, did you want brakes with that? That'll cost extra.
Right. Do you need like any Matrix movie type moments here? Yeah. Because we can have some added features. I am fascinated. I just want to know. So fill me in, Cody. Let me know how elevator salespeople work, because I've never heard of such a designation before. But clearly he must be really good at it, because he sold everybody on that island about salespeople being untrustworthy.
Yeah. I mean, that's the main point. And you mentioned it a little bit earlier. He put the target on Justine by making these claims. And we've discussed it before. You brought it up earlier. Early on, players have to find anything they can to put a target. And this is just one of those situations. Call them weak, call them strong, call them schemey, call them disloyal.
Call them a salesperson.
Whatever it is, get a target away from yourself onto someone else. And Cody did exactly that by making it seem like Justine was this huge, huge threat.
Yep. It's amazing.
Now, to me, and you also got into this was the part I was like, is she looking at my notes? Cody successfully got into Jesse's head, because Jesse was even repeating privately that you should never trust a salesperson.
I know.
And then he started looking for every little thing.
Right.
Justine
This is why Cody was so good at being a salesperson.
Yes. Justine told me she's good at lying. Why would she do that? Well,
she's a salesperson.
Yeah, I mean, she said it because she believed they were working together, and it was supposed to be something to help him. But because he was already worried about her, he took that as a negative, like she was going to be lying to him after she told him she could lie well.
Yeah.
Plus he said she seemed scary and smart and calculating and, quote, kind of lethal. It just all piled on.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm telling you, Cody really set the stage for her demise very quickly. And then Jesse swooped in there and was like, let me finish this one off.
Yeah. Now, I will say that in addition to what, the stuff that Jesse had said, it wasn't just about her being in sales because, as we already discussed, it was also about her being so tight with Noelle, as we already discussed. And that part was indeed true. Plus, as we also talked about already, while Justine said she trusted Jesse and felt close to him, she acknowledged that it was third closest.
Yeah.
And, it's just not great to know that there are two other people on a 6-person tribe who are closer than he was.
Right. And I really think, too, that the relationship that she had with Noelle, I think, was not as significant as everything that Cody had kind of put out there regarding Justine, because nobody was talking about the Noelle half of that, right? I mean, they were talking about the two of them together, but then it was falling back on Justine.
Right.
And so if it was really just about that relationship, well, why aren't we talking about Noelle too? Then you've got this added level of, oh, well, she's, can't be trusted. She's a salesperson, all of this extra that's been added on. So she definitely found herself up against a lot of things that were completely out of her control.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I do want to address a few other things that did not cause them to worry about her being too much of a threat, even though it might have seemed like it. One of these things was in the episode. One came up in her interviews. The one from the episode was when Justine came up to Jesse and, said, oh, I wonder if I can trust you because I have a tiny inkling and I don't want to get hoodwinked. And this led to Jesse telling us that he couldn't have someone who didn't trust him. But really, he'd already made up his mind at that point. That was clear. We saw that. So I guess it was a little bit more icing on the cake, but that cake had already been fully baked.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, they threw it in there. They threw it on the show, but at that point, it didn't matter. The other item is that she told some interviewers, including Rob, that she thought her starting the fire had made her something of a threat. And I just don't think so. She apparently saw that in some Reddit threads and Twitter posts that they were saying she showed her cards too early. And, I suspect her own thought process in talking about that in interviews was impacted by what she had seen online. I personally didn't see it from anyone I follow on Twitter. And I, of course, only follow the intelligent people on Twitter. So I'm not saying if I don't follow you, you're not intelligent, because there are a lot of people I just don't have the time. But obviously, some people on Twitter and Reddit, and heaven forbid Facebook, may not think through everything quite the same way. And I think it is silly for someone to say she was targeted because she made fire. She showed her cards too early.
Well, and I will say that making fire on Survivor, is an awesome feat to actually accomplish. And now, clearly, because of the fire making at 4 has become more of a thing. But making fire on Survivor is part of playing Survivor.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those, you need to have it. And if you have someone on your tribe that's really great at it, awesome. Then you're like, great, we're going to have fire. And if you can make it, awesome. So I do think that there's kind of a shift there. Excuse me one second.
Jessica just had to, she inhaled some smoke from all the fire that.
A little too much, right?
Yeah.
But I do think that there is that now added component relative to fire. But I was practicing making fire with Flint before I went out to Survivor. People do that because you have to, because you're playing the game of Survivor, period.
Yeah.
It doesn't come down to the fire making challenge.
Yeah. So if Justine, if you're listening, watching, ignore those people on Reddit and Twitter. They're wrong.
But you're still the queen of fire, so it's okay.
Yes. Fire spiders. So, because she became the queen of spiders. So I think you just combine them and she's the queen of fire spiders.
Ooh.
Yeah. Which, if you thought regular spiders were scary, imagine fire spiders.
Oh my God. No. Yeah. No, thank you.
All right. Well, we can go into Rule 7, which covers idols and advantages in game mechanics. And, Justine got asked by, I think, every interviewer about the beads and Cody's hat. But, of course, she didn't have any suspicion. She had no reason to have any suspicions. And we talked about this already, that Cody was the perfect person to do a crazy task.
Yeah.
And it helped, again, that he had 2 other actors in his little troupe to help put on a show and get the remaining 3. Like, oh, yes. I mean, they did it much better than this. Yeah, I'll donate to the cause. Oh, here, yeah, you. Oh,
here,
Noelle,
have all of my beads.
Yeah, here, Noelle, you should do it too. Let's everyone do it. Let's make it a tribal activity. Yeah.
Now, was there anything on that parchment that specified whether or not he could just take them?
It said you cannot take them. You have to.
Oh, okay. I was curious about that.
Now, actually, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was a hoarder when I was out there.
Oh, yeah.
And I was ripping things off of everything. So, like, when we were leaving camp, when we had merged and they were like, pack up all your stuff, like, right now. I ran over to our sign and I, like, ripped everything. And I was like, taking this. I am bringing stuff home with me. And so I might have ripped a few things off of some torches. So,
you probably impacted their eBay value.
I'm sure it did. So if anyone actually got one of those, which I'm super jealous, and it should have an extra, like, thing on it that seems to be missing, it's probably in my bag.
Yeah, I actually meant to look up. This question came up on Rob was doing an Instagram live, and the question came up of, like, it was the wording that he was supposed to make it into a bracelet. And as such, if you look at it from a technicality standpoint, did he do what was necessary? I forgot to go back and look that up. I would say you could, there's no definition of the length of a bracelet. And so if he connected all the beads together, even if they were on a hat,
it's a really big bracelet.
It's a really big bracelet.
Because you can just keep wrapping it around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some people have those. I used to work with someone who had one of those. It was just really long, And so I did not do
these things should not be up for interpretation.
Right. Exactly. And that's why I'm sad that I forgot to do that deep dive. I'm sorry.
Jeez, come on, Bloomberg.
I know.
You have one thing to do.
I know.
One thing.
I'm sorry. God. Actually, I had 2 things. I had to jump on as a special guest on the feedback show to give an update on Garrett Adelson. So
stop.
But
in your retired existence, these TikToks.
Yes, exactly.
And podcasting.
Yes.
Ugh.
Yes. So now, besides the continuing with Rule 7, sorry. Besides this issue, there was, of course,
what are we listening to?
Yeah, there was, of course, Dwight's lost vote, and that hurt Justine's cause in that it seems like it might have been tied 3-3 if he had it. But then we have to remember the vote split plan because they were so sure that Jesse was with them. So if they had had what they believed were 4 votes, they probably would have done a 2-2 split. Or they might have just done a 3-1, and it still wouldn't have mattered because Jesse would have made sure he was one of the supposed 3, and it would have ended up being a 2-1, and it wouldn't,
I think the 3-1 would have made more sense because if you are throwing in that 1 and then it ends up becoming a tie, if you have the majority, then they're just all going to vote for the other person anyway.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right, well, we can move on to Appendix A, which is about the players keeping their end goals in mind when voting. And we talk about voting out the weak, then the strong, then the weak, then the strong. This was once again, obviously, on the minds of everyone on the tribe, one way or the other, as Noelle and Justine pushed to keep the tribe strong by voting out NECA, while Cody and Jesse went the alliance route. And this episode showed exactly what we were talking about last week.
Right?
With Tiffany.
Look at you.
I made into a TikTok. And
which I
Wednesday
reposted.
morning. Yes. And I believe the perception was
There it is.
that she was not as good at challenges, and yet you stayed. Why did you stay?
Because I was good, and I was just
right.
I was in a good spot.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying is you are the perfect example for why you can get past that, even if they say you're not as good at challenges, because you were better in the strategic game. So there it was.
There was 2 Jessicas, there was 2 Bloombergs. That was a lot.
And 1 Tiffany, which is a lot anyway.
She's so lovely.
So yeah, I mean, that was the conversation. Sorry, it kind of jumped in there. First time ever sharing a clip like that. So look at us.
That was amazing.
Who knew we could do that? And see, this is what
great.
I do with my
now
time.
Now you have a new trick.
I have a new toy. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. I can put all the David Your Rights in there now.
There's so many things you could do.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to spend all my retired time thinking of them. But anyway, the point is that, yeah, we had just talked about it and poof, there it was. You know,
there it was.
Much like Tiffany had obvious problems on the balance beam in her season, Nneka was practically dying while dragging the snake, like you mentioned. And the thing was, she was getting called out by Jeff, but she couldn't even get the puzzle going either. And forget about
the extra piece in the bag on the ground.
But even besides that, she was just, Jeff was just like, and they've come to a stop again. And this was during the puzzle. They're just kind of staring at things and not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Cody admitted to Jesse, Nneka was atrocious. But he immediately followed it up by saying, but she's one of us. In much the same way that Evie was never going to let Tiffany go in 41 at that point.
Yeah, there is a lot to be said about Survivor and the relationship component of it. Because yes, the challenges are important. But also, if you're looking at majority rules and you have the majority, well, even if we go to another tribal council, we still have options. We still have people we can vote out. And if we go to another one, guess what? There's another option because we still have the majority, which is a terrible way to think. But when you're playing Survivor, that's what you're doing. You're voting people out.
I think that's what Tiffany said last week. She said, I knew if we went down to 2, I'd be one of the 2.
Yeah.
And so even Jeff brought up the question of challenge strength versus keeping the ally in tribal council. And the answer is almost always keeping an ally, because that is what true strength means in Survivor.
Right.
And, so yeah, like you said, they lose next week. Bye, Noelle. They lose the week after that. Bye, Dwight. Right. They would need to lose 3 more challenges before the merge, before they have to worry about breaking up their own alliance.
Yeah.
So, all right. With that, it is about time to wrap things up. What are your final thoughts?
Well, I will say that when I first learned about Justine, I was curious because I wasn't sure how she was going to be on Survivor. And when I mean, I just wasn't sure how she would come across, how she would end up melding into the world of Survivor. She seemed very impressive on paper, but there was just something about her that I was curious about because I was left wondering. And I think that we probably were a little bit cheated out of somebody who I think would have given us some really good Survivor playing, because I do think that Justine had the right idea. She had the right approach. She knew she needed to form a solid alliance. She knew she needed to form bonds and trust with people. But unfortunately, she didn't extend it out far enough. And she didn't reach into every person who was with her and tried to formulate that bond. She got comfortable. So she did the one thing that you never want to do on Survivor, and that's get comfortable. Trust is one thing, but putting all of your trust into that one person, that's when you can find yourself in a really, really bad spot, which is what we found Justine in. She put all of her trust into Jesse, thought for sure he was 100% solid with her, and she found herself getting voted out. So unfortunately for Justine, she learned a very hard lesson relative to Survivor, and that's you can never put all your eggs in one basket. You have to make sure that you have gotten into every basket and that you have tried every potential egg that's out there in order to make a determination how to control your game as opposed to letting someone control your game for you. So it's too bad that we lost Justine so soon, because I was very intrigued, because I do think that she would have brought us some really incredible gameplay.
Mm-hmm. In Justine's interview, she said that she didn't realize Jesse saw her as a threat, but she would 100% take that as a compliment, because if she was going to get voted out, she'd much rather be voted out for that reason as opposed to being weak or something like that. And I can understand that thought process, and I'm sure most people would feel that way as some small consolation to having been voted out, especially this early. But the thing is, either way, her torch was still snuffed. And being seen as too much of a threat is indeed a very legitimate reason to get rid of somebody. It just so happens that in this particular case, it was more of a manufactured threat than a real one. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying Justine couldn't have turned into a real threat, but she wasn't really one yet in the 5 days that they'd been out there. However, Cody pushed so hard to make everyone think she was that we once again had a situation where perception became reality.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, to Cody, Justine was indeed a threat. She and Noelle would have voted out Cody's tight ally, NECA, if they were given the chance. Then they would have been in control of the tribe, and he probably would have been next. He turned it around by painting a target on her, starting with something he knew a lot about, those scary salespeople. Then, as we discussed, he piled it on from there, and some people, like Jesse, started attributing any good, bad, or neutral behavior from her as showing just how dangerous she was. Justine thought she was doing a good job of strategizing and believed she was in the majority, but she didn't have any backup plans because she saw that Cody and NECA weren't trying to work with her, so she decided she wasn't going to try to work with them either. This made her completely reliant on Jesse, who out-schemed her by being a triple agent after he had been convinced she was a huge threat. In the end, as Jeff discussed, it came down to the age-old question of challenge strength versus alliance strength. When it comes to the long game of Survivor, alliances have the much bigger impact. NECA was not good in challenges, but was a solid ally, while it turned out Justine was in the reverse situation, and that is why Justine lost.
Excellent.
So, with that, before we get to our predictions, let me remind everyone that the rules come in multiple forms. The rules we just discussed. We'll start in reverse order. You've got the checklist t-shirt, the checklist mug. Then you go up and you get the poster t-shirt, the poster sweatshirt, and of course the poster itself. All of those can be found at robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed.
All of it and more.
Yes, much more. So go there and as Jessica said before, read it, click it, order it, buy it, wear it, or words to that effect.
Something like that.
Yes.
I think your order made more sense.
Yes. Well, I tried. All right. Predictions. You got it right. You get to go first. I just decided that on the fly.
Of course you did. So I will say, incredibly impressed by the Baka tribe in that challenge. That was amazing. I did not expect them to be so impressive. Coco, they were also very impressive. Bessie, obviously, we've already discussed.
Now, do you think Baka was as impressive because, as we saw in the secret scene, Owen nailed exactly what the challenge was going to be?
Yeah.
Down
do you
to,
think they were practicing picking up a 400-pound snake?
They could plan. I mean, they could be like, okay, this is what we're going to do.
Oh, sure.
And he even knew. He
knew it was 400 pounds.
Right, exactly. Sammy's over there like, oh yeah, like 200 pounds or something. And Owen didn't even argue it. Owen's like, heavier than that. But then come to confessional, he's like 400 pounds.
Yeah, so that's when being a fan of Survivor, a super fan of Survivor, really helps, because you know all of the nuanced components of these challenges. So, but I feel like, oh gosh, this is terrible. I really have to go first?
Yes, you do.
I don't like this. So
then don't get it right and you won't have to go first.
Oh, that's a good idea. So I have a crazy thought. All right.
Only one?
Yeah, just one. No, that's not going to happen either. Oh, Lord. I don't like this at all. Okay. So I really don't know. Because here's the problem. There's so many permutations that
you're supposed to think about this before the podcast.
Okay. You know what I was doing.
I know.
I was a little bit busy today. All right. But all right. So here's my concern. If we go back to the Baka tribe, I just feel like there's something about the Baka tribe that is but then I'm also thinking Coco. I'm between Baka and Coco that it's going to be someone from Baka and someone from Coco. For some reason, my brain is going to Lindsay, and I don't know why.
Oh, that's bad. Don't say
I
that.
know it's bad because I love her. I think she's great. But then I'm also thinking that Gabler, because of everything that we've seen relative to his being not feeling well and not doing well. So I'm going to go with Gabler.
You know, he still has that immunity idol.
Shit. Okay. Sorry. Lindsay. You've convinced me.
Well, I didn't mean to convince you to go with Lindsay of all people.
I know. And listen, because I'm looking at Coco right now, we know that Gio and Ryan are close. James is definitely in with the women. Carla and Cassidy, they seem to have connected, if I'm remembering correctly. And I know Lindsay and Carla and Cassidy.
Cassidy, who's that?
Listen, I saw that. I liked it, but I really like Cassidy. So
I do too. That's why I want her more.
I know. So let's bring this girl out and show her to the world. She's lovely. By the way, she likes our show.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So, but yes, I love her too.
The question is, will she still after she saw that TikTok? Hopefully, she knows it was aimed at the producers, not
right. Like let's see some Cassidy because she is badass. But I don't know. There's something sending me in Lindsay's direction.
Okay. So here's mine. So starting with Vessi, if they
Which
go back,
is clearly much more thought out than mine.
Yes. I have
the beads.
You do. You have the beads. If Vessi goes back to tribal council, I see two possibilities: Noel or Dwight. Noel clearly on the outs. Dwight wasn't in on the vote and had pushed to get his way. But I still think Jesse wants to bring him back in. So that takes us back to Noel. Last week, I had suggested for Baka, if they go back to tribal council, that Janine would be in trouble. This week, the situation is muddled. In theory, as you said, it should be Gabler, but he has an expiring idol that any normal person would use in that situation. And the others have to presume he will, even though he hasn't been 100% normal when it comes to idols. Ellie and Janine think the guys aren't doing much, and Ellie would rather let Owen go than Sammy. Meanwhile, Sammy said the guys should stick together, and if any of them are approached by the women, report back so they can handle it. But I don't trust Sammy to actually do that. I think if Ellie tells him, hey, me and Janine want you to join us and vote out Owen, I think Salmon will be like, Guys Alliance? What Guys Alliance? Yeah, sure. We'll get rid of Owen. And this worries me quite a bit.
Why are you doing this?
I'm just telling you what I'm seeing here. As for Coco, after this episode, it sure looks like either Gio or Ryan would be going. Considering we had seen Gio struggling previously in a challenge and Ryan's overall strength and size, I'm sticking with my thought that Gio would be voted out. Now, with all that in mind, official prediction, Vessi goes back to tribal council, and they follow up the Justine vote with a Noel vote.
Sad.
Yes.
All very sad.
It is. It really is.
It is.
All right. Well, as we wrap up, I want to encourage people to check out the RHAP patron program at robhaswebsite.com/patron. You can get access to our various Survivor patron patron survivor related podcasts. Survivor Academy, for example, is this week. Rob is doing that 5 times during the season, I believe is the plan. We had appeared on that last season. And there's the patron 5 for 5. There's patrons get earlier access to and live access to a number of different podcasts. And of course, when those aren't going on, there's the Facebook groups and Discord to keep everyone occupied with a great community of people. So yes, everybody should sign up. Apparently now there's a new thing Patreon is doing. At times you've heard me say, oh, wait till the end of the month to sign up. But now they're doing it on a true, like, you sign up today, you get billed in 30 days. It's not based on like, you don't get charged for a whole month if you happen to sign up on the 30th of the month or something. So
that's good.
So yeah. So you can go to robhasawebsite.com/patron. It helps support shows like ours and everything on the network. Or you can click on the link at robhasawebsite.com/YXLostFeed. And once you get to the Facebook groups, make sure to say hello.
Yes, and you should also say hello to us on Twitter. I'm at Jessica Lewis 89, and he is at David Bloomberg. You should definitely follow us both because you can see that I am slow on my GIF selection, and David Bloomberg, who doesn't use GIFs, just madly types.
I use GIFs sometimes.
Post.
I'm not doing that. I'm using the computer.
Looking for the perfect GIF, and I'm 2 seconds behind him. Then he has to remind me of it. So you should definitely follow us both. Again,
I only reminded you 3 times on Wednesday.
Yes, because we do live tweet, which is what I'm referring to.
Yes.
And at David Bloomberg. And also, you've heard about David Bloomberg's TikToks. He is at David_Bloomberg. As you saw, there was 2 Jessicas and 2 Davids just on this podcast.
Yes.
And that's because of one of his TikToks as well. So please follow him there. And then Instagram is a thing too. I don't post as much on Instagram, but I'm at Jessica Lewis 6789. And I don't remember what yours is.
David.e.Bloomberg.
Yours are so confusing.
I know, because some other David, who knew there were so many David Bloombergs out there?
Apparently, it's like a popular name.
My names. But yes, and it's funny because like for some of the Survivor stuff, I posted on TikTok where I have like 6 times as many followers as Instagram. That's not as big a feat because on Instagram I don't have very many, and it'll only get a few hundred, and then I'll post it on Instagram and it'll get like thousands, and I'm like, I don't understand how these work. Someone please explain this to me. But
all of it's weird. There's so much social media, so much.
Yes. So just wait till I start up my YouTube channel and you'll have one more thing to read.
Lord have mercy. Yes. You and your retirement.
I know. I've got to support myself, even though I don't actually make anything from any of this. But hey, so everyone should also subscribe to all of the RHAP podcasts by going to our YX Lost feed page. You'll find great content for the Survivor world, like the Know-It-Alls, Taryn Stockwatch, Shannon Gus's Survivor International, the B&B, much more. So again, go to the YX Lost feed page and click on the subscribe button.
And thank you to Scott St. Pierre for all of the editing that he does, not only for the Why Blank Lost podcast, but all of the editing on RHAP. You do an incredible job, lots of incredible work. So thank you, Scott, for everything. And also thank you to Will from America for our catchy theme song. We love it. It's fabulous. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for joining us again. Thank you, David, for making me laugh so much I almost was coughing all over the podcast. So I appreciate it as always. It's been quite fun. And me and the beads we'll get you next time.
Okay.
I'll make sure to share a little bit.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Jessica. And as I said, I know you had a long day. So to add on to this, come here and podcast for everyone. We all appreciate it. So we will see everyone in a week. But I guess before we go, I should mention, if you haven't watched or listened to the Why Taylor Won and Monty and Turner Lost podcast with me and Ovi, you should do that. But most people probably have turned off because I was about to say goodbye. But if you haven't, then you should definitely go check that out. And now I will say, Jessica and I will see you in a week. Bye.
Bye.